This is the New York City FC Pregame Live. Tonight, New York City FC look to get back in the win column as they host the Philadelphia Union at Citi Field. And now, here are your hosts, Glenn Crooks and Matty Lawrence.
Hey, there we are. Hi, Matty.
Hello, Glenn. How are you?
I'm good. Good.
Okay.
Everything's sounding okay. I'm checking the levels here, and I'm gonna.
You sound slightly skeptical, but yes, it sounds okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw up the starters right off the bat, and one interesting change. Well, Tylos Magno for the second straight game will be on the bench. Andres Jason will start this week. It was Matias Pellegrini last week at Orlando, but Pellegrini got hurt just a few minutes into the game. He's not available today. Magno went in and I think probably had one of his better matches of the year and assisted on the eventual equalizer by Gabe Siegel.
Yeah, I think it was his best game of the year. I know he didn't start, but he played for the majority of the game, as you just said. I'm a little surprised, I think, that he didn't earn his place in the starting lineup with that performance. But is it Nick Cushing again just telling him that, he needs to see more consistency? He needs to be performing week in, week out. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but he has to do that.
Yeah.
Is it just another, metaphorical kick up the backside for him? We know how wonderfully talented he is. We know how much money he gets paid. He's a very, very important part of this team. He can't be an important part of the team from the bench, but unless somebody gets injured early on. As I say, last week, it was the first time I'd seen him play with confidence. And for me as well, a little bit of drive and desire as well. I think he's been a bit lethargic throughout the season. That's just my opinion.
And that is the way he is, too, sometimes. We might mistaken lethargy for the way he is, but you could also see the lack of confidence, especially in his ability to beat the first defender off the dribble. I know we've talked about that off mic. When he first arrived and throughout most of his time here, beating that first defender is what caused a lot of the issues.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I know everybody has a different playing style. Players I remember either playing against or playing with the likes of Chris Waddle or Matt Letizia or David Ginola. They had a bit of lethargy about them but they performed and they produced week in, week out. And for a number of years, those guys were absolutely peak performers. I think you start questioning somebody's manner and demeanor when they're not performing well. I don't think we even bring up lethargy and his playing style if he scored 6 goals and produced 4 assists.
Right.
But the minute you're underperforming, then you start looking a little deeper. And I do understand it's the way he plays and it's his demeanor. But when you're not performing, obviously we can bring it up. It's only too right that you try and work out why he's not performing to the best of his ability.
And 3 goals and 1 assist, and his first assist of the season coming last week in what leading into a bye week we feel was a pretty important draw. You're down a goal on the road. You're about to lose your 5th straight match in all competitions, and then you snap that. Gabe Siegel starting in place of Richie Ledesma to begin the second half. Ledesma had started the match, and New York City went to a natural number 9, and it was Gabe Siegel. And, Matty, I want to play the call of that here on the New York City network with myself and yourself. And then at the back end of this, I want to show a Stanford goal when he was a freshman, which I think you dug out at one time. So, but compare the two, and I thought your call was in particularly specific to the position. But here we go. Santi Rodriguez, second ball now. Tyler Magno dancing, shooting, and there's a finish! Gabe Siegel gets his first and gets a big hug from Tyler Magno and Andres Jason. And there's your tying goal just before the 90-minute mark. And New York City on the road, and it's the sort of tally that maybe can lift a bit of a load off the shoulders of the men in their Interborough blue kits, getting the equalizer and getting it from the striker, Gabe Siegel, his 5th appearance in all competitions, his first as a reserve as he started the second half for New York City. And we've talked about the players attacking the space. You mentioned it in the first half, and Siegel went at it.
Who can score that goal? Only a centre forward, only a true centre forward. Nobody else scores that goal. He's got the right intuition, the right instincts, Gabe Siegel, and I feel so pleased for him because he's been doing the right thing ever since he came on at half-time, Glenn.
The happiest we've seen Tyler Magno in quite some time, and he gets the assist on that.
Waldeck serves it up, and the score by Gabe Siegel. That was fantastic. Defense turned into offense, and the Cardinals are dancing out to a 3-0 lead.
Now, what about the celebration there? So next time we see him, we're going to have to suggest that he comes up with something a little bit more, I don't know.
Well, hopefully he celebrated like that in the dressing room after the game. It was his birthday, got his first goal and his birthday as well.
Yep.
But as you said, 2 very, very similar goals, and that's what he is. And we were talking about it throughout the commentary. And whenever we've commentated on Gabe Siegel, he is that player. He's a fox in the box, he's a poacher, and he's a centre forward. He's the only centre forward in the team. He's the only, I think I said it at the time, the only man in the whole squad, I think, who would have scored that goal, because he's got that natural instinct to get into the 6-yard box and feed off scraps, whether it takes a ricochet off the goalkeeper, whether he gets it direct from a teammate, as he did from Tyler Magno. And again, another player who I think will be a little unhappy maybe not to be starting today. I think when you score a goal, your first goal of your career, I think almost you deserve to be starting the next game. But we'll see if he comes on. We'll see how they perform.
Competition.
Absolutely, it's great.
Kevin O'Toole in for Brian Coufret again. Mitja Ilinic, the 18-year-old, making his first start since April the 29th at Toronto. He's in for Tavon Gray. So it is important, and especially at a time of the year where things are still not quite where they need to be. Obviously, you're below the playoff line coming into this one in 10th place in the Eastern Conference is New York City FC. And I thought a defining moment after the Orlando match, something we haven't seen before, and we're at the stadium for each match, home and away, the huddle, the circle was formed, and it was formed by Thiago Martins. And I talked to Nick Cushing about that earlier in the week. This is part of our pregame show coming up at 7:15.
And the end was Thiago Martins' moment. It wasn't mine. I spoke in the huddle, but it was Thiago Martins. You know, I've pushed a lot of guys on stepping up and being leaders. The leadership of our group is Thiago Martins, it is Maxime Chanot, it's James Sands, it's Keaton Parks, it's Alfredo Morelos. You know, I'm pushing those guys every day to be leaders.
But Martins seems to, at least visually, and then you see the gestures and how he's directing teammates, he seems to have really moved to the forefront there.
Yeah, I think you really see he's consciously being a leader. He's consciously working on his presence in the group, and I think that is off the back of his performances have been excellent. He has been by far our best player, our most consistent player. He has been excellent this year, and I think the leadership comes from the confidence in performance. And you know, this is where we have to get 6, 7, 8, 10, 11 of our guys on the pitch, real confidence in their own performance, but also real presence on the field and maturity.
By far our best player. So that's Nick Cushing talking about Thiago Martins. And I think as the year began and then James Sands came into the fold, I think, and Sands has performed well, but you would always think maybe as Sands as the most valuable player. And right now in the head coach's mind, it's Thiago Martins.
I think Martins is right up there. I don't think there's many players in the team, because the team's not playing that well, that can be considered, the best player of the season so far. And what are we, 13 games in? Martins, Sands. I honestly don't know who else it could be. Luis Barraza, maybe. And it's strange that we're talking about defensive-minded players when you've conceded 16 goals in 13 games. So that tells you maybe not how bad it is at the other end of the field, but it just tells you that it hasn't quite clicked into place in the attacking sense. Certainly not, in a consistent manner anyway.
Here's a question. No, we don't have any word on bringing in a number 9 in the next open window, and from the Staten Island Soccer Report. But that, it's obviously part of our discussion about Gabe Siegel being on the bench, coming off the bench in the second half as the 9 to score the equalizer. It's the false 9 again today, with Richie Ledesma and Santi Rodriguez starting together. And we should take a glance at least at Philadelphia, a team unbeaten in their last 6, Matty.
Yep.
And they're going with the same lineup that produced a 3-0 victory at home last week against the New England Revolution. So the Union, they struggled early on, but they struggled like many MLS teams seem to that are involved in CONCACAF Champions League competition, and you get deep into that competition. Philadelphia has not lost a game since they were eliminated from the CCL by LAFC. I don't think that's just a coincidence.
No, it's not. And they struggled early on. We know that. I think they lost 4 of their first 6 or 7 games. Unbeaten in 6, as you say. It's not just unbeaten in 6. They've won 4 as well. They've won 4 of them. They've kept 3 clean sheets in those 6 games. They've played some decent teams in there. They beat New England Revolution very, very comfortably, 3-0 in their last game. This is a good side. And you and I looked down at the team sheet, and it's certainly a team sheet that we're very familiar with.
Yeah.
And they've got some really good players. Yes, they've maybe not got the superstars. There's no Carlos Vela, or there's not a Wayne Rooney or a Schweinsteiger or David Villa that was here at NYCFC.
Yeah, but
they got some really
Gazdag's
at
22
quality
goals and 16 assists a season ago.
All I mean is not a superstar player.
Yeah.
Lots of people outside of, Hungary and MLS aren't going to know who on earth he is, whereas David Villa is known worldwide. You're absolutely right. Look, I think Gazdag and Carlos Heel are 2 of the best players in MLS without a shadow of a doubt, and that includes Insigne, Bernardeschi. These are players who absolutely produce, and Gazdag, I like watching him play. I maybe hope he has a bad game today, but I like watching him play. You had the stat about his penalty kicks as well. This is a guy that you can rely on.
Well, he had a brace last week, including a penalty to help beat the Revs 3-0. Listen to this, Mark. So he was, in 2022 last year, 7 for 7 from the spot. This year, of his 6 goals, 5 of them have been penalties. How about that? And he is 13 for 13 in his MLS career, and that's the highest 100% conversion rate in MLS history with that many takes.
It's pretty good. Almost the law of averages says that you're going to miss one. The goalkeeper guesses the right way. You don't hit the target.
Well, he's like 4 one way, 5 the other, and 4 up the middle, too. I mean, that's Absolutely. The way he goes at it,
Certainly with statistics coming more and more into the game. I think back in the day when it was, Matt Letizia taking 100 penalties, the goalkeepers maybe didn't have the ability to go back and look at all of his penalties throughout his career. Now we know it. Now you see it time and time again. Goalkeepers have it written on their water bottle, or they have little notes in the back of their goal. It's analysed very, very, heavily. So Gazdag's going to know that as well. It's a war of psychology, isn't it? It's 1 against 1, goalkeeper and penalty taker. For Gazdag to have hit 13 out of 13, that's not bad.
That's not bad. So Barraza, which way does he go if Gazdag gets a penalty? 7:15 is airtime for the New York City FC pregame show on the network. Our live commentary, myself, Matty, Chris Saccone. You can see him in between us back there. Nice wave from Chris. He will host our halftime show and also the postgame show. And at Glenn Crooks on Twitter. Highlights throughout the game. He'll be producing those. And remember, today is an Apple TV home game, so you can go to the hometown commentary. Hey, hometown English commentary, and we'll give Philadelphia a fair shake too. So you dupe followers, please tune in if you like. Otherwise, just enjoy the match. But we're not quite done yet. because I want to get to the tactics. I want to get the tactical board. So Philadelphia has played 3 at the back in their last 2 MLS games, both wins, including the New England game. So they're going to do it again. This is Jim Curtin's been a 4-4-2 Guyman guy since Ernst Tanner arrived. Before that, he was 4-2-3-1. I don't know if we've ever seen him play 3 at the back. So I asked Coach Nick Cushing. You're going to hear the whole interview at 7:15, but here's a portion of it talking about this 3-back system. Interesting as he kind of thought back to last year with New York City.
Probably we're the best team to reflect on that, based on we did exactly the same last year. We think we were a very rigid 4-2-3-1 team, and we changed our shape last year for the New England game, I think.
Right.
And, we ended up in subsequent games with Alex Cayens delivering crosses from the edge of the box, overlapping Kevin O'Toole at left wing back, and we had Tavon Gray or Anton Tinnerholm at the back post, with goal chances. And, although there was a tactical element to the way that we played, I think the element of surprise and the element of aggression was probably our best attribute in that system. And, I see that from this change in Philadelphia. You see, not only is Martinez popping up in different areas, you see the outsides of their back 3 are stepping in and getting into really advanced areas. And, we have to be aware of that. We have to be aware that they can overload the sides with either a midfield player, with one of the centre halves, and also they have fullbacks the likes of Wagner can deliver great balls into the box. With the real, they have 2 strikers, which is a real threat for any team when you play against quality strikers like them. So I say again, we know who they are. The style is pretty similar, whatever shape they play. We have to make sure that we get a foothold in the game, and we make sure that we're dictating the game.
Yeah, I talked about their backs. Kai Wagner in particular had 15 assists a year ago. I mean, as a fullback.
Yeah.
But he's now a wing back, and you made a mention that you think he might be best as a fullback versus a wing back. Why do you say that?
Absolutely. I just think that he's easily marked as a wing back. I think he's pushed on too high as a wing back. I think as a fullback, it's easier to overlap, and with that 4 diamond system as well, it just suits him bombing up and down the whole left-hand side. I feel that I just don't see him as dynamic enough to play as a wing back. I think as an orthodox fullback, he's absolutely magnificent. For me, that's his best position. I think this is shoehorning players into a system. I really do, from Jim Curtin. Look, it worked against New England Revolution, but I think that Glesnes and Jack Elliott have been the 2 best centre-halves consistently throughout the last 2, if not 3 seasons.
Right.
And that includes Carlins and Chenot when they were at their very, very best. I think I said it in the Eastern Conference time and time again a couple of years ago. It's Glesnes and Elliott and Chenot and Carlins who were the best 2 centre-half pairings, not only in the Eastern Conference, but I thought the whole of the league, the whole of the Major League Soccer. So to be adding another centre-half there, I think that's almost shoehorning Damien Lowe in. I think you mentioned to me, Glenn, that Jim Curtin really likes Damien Lowe. Well, just because you really like someone doesn't mean they have to play. And I think Elliott and Glesnes are magnificent. I don't think any of those 3 players are good enough on the ball either to play as a back 3. But look, it works against New England Revolution. Jim Curtin sees them way more than I do. He obviously thinks it will work, maybe not long term, but it will. In the short term, it's working. So let's see how it works for them today.
And they're down a few players. 3 Philadelphia Union homegrowns: Quinn Sullivan, Jack McGlynn. McGlynn's an important figure here, as is Sullivan, and to a lesser extent, defender Brandon Craig. But they're all with the USU 20s, who swept through the group stage for the first time ever. So they're on to the round of 16 next Tuesday against to be named opponents. That's pretty interesting to watch.
Yes.
Now, while New York City does not have U20 players, there are 3 who were invited. Check that, 4 who were invited into the U17s in preparation for the World Cup. Andrew Bahera, Christian McFarlane, who's a homegrown, along with Maximo Carrizo, also a homegrown, and Jonathan Shore, who was signed as a homegrown a little bit earlier this year. So congratulations to those 4 young men out of the New York City Academy and New York City FC 2, and we see all of them at training quite often. We're approaching our live commentary beginning at 7:15 pregame show with Nick Cushing, presented by Ford. A couple of the other things, I've been wanting to play this, but I've been waiting for him to start, and that's Micha Ilinic. 18 years old.
Yep.
Our Slovenian friend. And I sat down with him not too long ago, part of the On Frame podcast. Go back and listen. It's pretty interesting. He's a wonderful young man. But we talked about his transition. He used to be a winger. He used to be an attacking player in his youth. And it hasn't been that long that he had been switched to fullback. Here's Micha describing that.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. I was a winger until I got under 17s. So
Wow.
I think now I have been, 3 years right back. So yeah, I used to be a winger, but my problem was if you're a winger, you need to score goal. So if you don't score goals, it's not that good. So yeah, they saw that I can run, I can be physically good. So they put me on the right back and I somehow got good here. And yeah, so the main goal is to improve defense.
Well, as you know, you're not the first player to be a winger and then get switched to the back,
Exactly.
maybe for that exact reason, right?
Exactly. I think it's the same for everybody. Like, if you can run, if you are like having a good technique, you can be right back.
Boy, the number of wingers that have made their way to the back. I'm sure you've got a number of friends who made that transition. It makes sense, especially in the modern attacking fullback.
Yeah, you look at João
area.
Cancelo, you look at Trent Alexander-Arnold, who almost play right back as well as the centre midfielder. I think Ilinic plays it more in a more orthodox manner. He's up and down the right-hand side rather than cutting inside. He's down the flank and providing crosses. But I think it's very obvious to everybody that he's comfortable on the ball, technically gifted. It's the defensive side of the game that he'll need to work on. And I listened to the whole of that interview, Glenn. It's absolutely a wonderful interview, learning not only about Ilinic as a player, but as Ilinic as a human being, which is what we all want to learn about as well. What's behind the player and his transition from Slovenia, which has a population of a few million, to here to New York City, where there's 8 million people.
And the town he grew up in was 3,000.
Exactly. the transition and how that has altered his life and coming here, as an 18-year-old kid as well, you have to give him a lot of props to have the ability to come here and fit relatively seamlessly into this team, it seems.
So that's Micha Ilinic. He gets a start today. First start since April the 29th. He had started 7 of 8, got hurt a little bit. Then Tavon Gray came back from injury. So as Nick Cushing put it, and I there's no shock in this statement, one attacks very well and one defends very well, and neither of them do both really well. And that's how he comes up with the starting 11 sometimes to decide whether he wants the more attacking fullback or the more defending fullback. One other note, want to congratulate former New York City FC coach Ronnie Dyla, who really did well with Standard Liège. They moved, I think, 8 places up the table under Dyla, and Efrain Juarez, his assistant, who was also here with New York City FC, and has been rewarded with the head position at Club Bruges. What does that mean for someone like Ronnie Dyla? They're in that mix for Champions League, ultimately.
They are. I think they're in the Conference League next season.
Yeah.
But they're a side that really need to be vying for Champions League spots. I think Bruges have been in the Champions League the last 3 or 4 seasons. I keep an eye out for Bruges because obviously Tejan Buchanan, who is at Syracuse University, he's transitioned over to Bruges. There's rumours that he won't be there next season. There's talks of clubs like Inter Milan looking at Tejan Buchanan. Don't know whether he's moving or not. Certainly Ronnie Dyla would want to keep hold of a player like Buchanan. But for Ronnie Dyla, it's just another move up the totem pole. And if you do well with Bruges and you get them into the top spot or second in the Belgian league, and then you get them into the Champions League, the next move from there is to one of a side in the Big 5 leagues in Europe. That's the transition that Ronnie Dyla wants to have, I would imagine.
That's why he left, and yes. I think that's what he's getting. So Nick Cushing, we talked to him about Ronnie Dyla and Efrain, and that'll be part of the pregame interview that you'll hear on the NYCFC.com/radio network, also on the TuneIn app, the NYCFC app, and the Apple TV app. You can do the drop down and watch the video of the game and our audio, the English hometown commentary. Well, that's going to do it for us. You see Citi Field on your screen in Queens. That's where New York City will host Philadelphia. Citi Field, home of the second best baseball team in New York City. I said that for my partner, my family, most of whom are Met fans. And Sorry, guys. It's all about the Yankees here on the NYCFC Pregame Live. It's all about New York City FC. Can they continue their unbeaten ways at home and get their first win in a while? They haven't tasted victory in quite some time, and will today be the day in a rematch of last year's Eastern Conference Final? We'll see. Enjoy the game, everybody.